day to all the bow hunters out there. Welcome to another edition of Fritz Rabe Adventures. We are discussing bow hunting of the Cape Buffalo. More specifically, the equipment to use. And we're going to start this program with Broadheads. There's a lot of opinions out there. A lot of facts are being thrown around. Although very few people have got enough experience to consistently produce the goods, and especially with bow hunters who want to come to Africa to hunt Cape Buffalo, where do they get the right information from? A lot of people go onto the internet. That's the easiest way, and rightfully so. I see a lot of people quote the legendary Dr. Ed Ashby when it comes to broadheads. And the tests that he's done, the amount of experience he's got is not questionable, although it's for a different species. Most of his buffalo that he's conducted his tests on were water buffalo. And also, a very important thing, it was done for traditional bow hunting equipment. Longbows, recurves, that. And as we all know, we've got experience in both types. Longbow equipment or traditional bow hunting equipment is not necessarily the best when it comes to compounds, for obvious reasons. I'm going to discuss the compound bow hunters for Cape Buffalo today, because they are by far the majority. And the broadheads that I'm going to talk to you about, I've got 4 broadheads here that I've used myself on buffalo. As mentioned, I've guided about roughly 150 Cape Buffalo bow hunts, and through those hunts I picked up on a lot of things that we made mistakes on, and improved on that. I've seen what works, I've seen what shots work, what angles work, and I've also seen what does not work, irrespective of the advertising that is out there. Because most archery shops will try and tell you what you want to hear, but also to sell to you what they've got in stock. Not necessarily the right tool for the job. Now, I'm not conning any archery shops out there. They have to earn a living. I'm just trying to help would-be bow hunters to Africa who's after Cape Buffalo. It is the most sought after animal in the Big Six, and it is the animal that gets hunted the most. There's a lot of mishaps. We do experience a few deaths every year, mostly from professional hunters who step in line to take the hit. Luckily, injuries and deaths of clients are very, very few, because that is not good for our business. Speaking of that, dangerous game hunting. Every hunter who comes to Africa wants to experience that. But nobody wants the hunt to be dangerous. Think about that. Now, let's get back to the broadheads that I advise my clients on Cape Buffalo hunts. We shall mention each one and go through the pros and cons of each one of the 4. Right. The first broadhead we've got here is a very old, very reliable, for those days, 170 grain Zwiggy. The second one is a 250 grain broadhead from VPA. One of my personal favorites, the 210 grain original German Kinetic, not the new copy. There are copies from the original German Kinetic. They do not work so well. I've seen too many of them break. I've never seen an original German Kinetic break. Then a fairly new broadhead that really impressed me is the Iron Will. Now this is also a 210 grain iron will and fantastic broadhead. Let us look at each and every one, starting with the Zwiggy. The Zwiggy does not need any introduction. It has been around forever. I've hunted a lot of buffalo with them. They did work way back in the day because it was the best we had then. The steel on the Zwiggy do bend. What I've done is on the tip, I cut the tip off and turned it into a chisel tip. That did improve performance, but again, the ferrule, aluminum, and that was the weak point of the Zwiggy, along with the tip that bent. It's a very long broadhead, which does not help on penetration through bone. You get a lot of lateral forces in play on the arrow, on the shaft, which makes it bend or snap off. This broadhead from VPA, the 250 grain one, is a solid broadhead, very well constructed. I am really impressed with it. It did well on the buffalo tests, well, not tests, on the buffalo hunts that I've done with it. I really cannot find fault with it. It is sharp, although every broadhead that I take out of a new packet I first test, and there are only two for buffalo that come out scary sharp from the packet. The only disadvantage of the VPA, again, it is very long and relatively thin, although it is very well constructed. It is definitely a step up from the Zwiggy. Now for the German Kinetic. Probably most of my dangerous game hunts were done with a German Kinetic, either the 210 grain that is shown here or the 180 grain. I've guided a lot of pachyderm hunts with them, elephant, rhino, hippo, as well as buffalo, and also a lot of giraffe. People who do not know or not familiar, a giraffe is probably one of the hardest animals in Africa to penetrate. Much more so than a buffalo. The German Kinetic is of very solid construction. Even though the ferrule is aluminum, it's a very strong aluminum. And the broadhead itself, the blade, slides in and is locked with proper screws. I've never seen a German Kinetic fail on the ferrule. I have seen the copies fail, but to bow hunters who can get hold of them, markers from German Kinetic in Germany is where you order them from. If you have to order through a archery shop, make sure they source them directly from Germany. They are expensive, but so is the animal that you're hunting, and rather have equipment that works, because then it becomes cheap. Lastly, the Iron Will broadhead. This is a broadhead that came into my possession in 2018. I was sent a bunch of them to test. First glance, I was impressed. Steel all over. The broadhead is relatively short, which gives it a lot more strength. It's not a very wide broadhead. You do not need width, like most other broadhead manufacturers try and tell us. You want penetration on a buffalo. And The iron wool broadhead is immensely strong. I was a huge fan of the German Kinetic, and I have to admit, if I have to choose a broadhead now for either pachyderms or buffalo, I would advise the iron wool. It's for another day to tell you the torture tests I've put the iron wool through. I've shot them into concrete. I've done quite a few buffalo hunts with them, and I've yet to see one fail. They all penetrate perfectly, no bending, nothing wrong with them. A lot of broadheads, after they've been shot through a buffalo, especially a buffalo that was rolling in the mud, has got in the end serrations on the blade. I've yet to see that on an iron wool. Now, there are a lot of other broadheads available, and I do not have them here because I don't believe in them. Yes, I know a lot of people will tell me the Maasai broadhead, and those work well because they know of somebody who has shot a buffalo with it. Those broadheads, again, are made for traditional archery. They are very long, there's a lot of lateral forces in play, and shot out of compound bows, those lateral forces, will work against you. You can have a broadhead that breaks off at the ferrule. You can have your shaft split. Now, a lot of people counter that with collaring their shafts. Why do that if you're going to pay for a broadhead and then pay for something like a buffalo by not getting the best? Now, I'm not trying to sell broadheads. I don't get a single cent from any manufacturer. All I'm trying to do is make the professional hunter's job easier by knowing that the broadhead that the client has got in his quiver will do the job. The only thing the archer has to do is to put it in the right place. And then rest assured that the broadhead will do its job. So if anybody asks me, what broadhead should I bring to Africa? My advice would be either one of the German Kinetic, the original one, or the iron wool. I've got a lot of experience with them, and I trust them with my life and the life of the trackers and the life of the client. Thank you.